Here is the other side, showing the US chain sprocket. As you can see, started to clean up some of the engine casing to see what the paint's like. It's quite nice underneath. Here's the stator cover. That's got to come off so that we can actually physically then look right inside, have a good understanding of what we're looking at, and then we can clean the entire bottom end, paint the end covers, put the end covers back on. And on this particular engine, I want to take that head off so we get an opportunity to have a good look inside to see what it's like. I want to replace the head gasket. I also want to fit a new thermostat. Obviously change the oil filter. All that would be obviously done. But yeah, there's the engine as it is. The engine is on the bench. I've taken the alternator cover off, and I've taken the clutch cover off, basically so that they can be cleaned up, painted, checked out, make sure everything's fine. All the other bits and pieces are off of the engine, and now the aim is to get the finish on the engine itself back to how it should be, nice and clean. And then once all of that's done and I've replaced the covers after they've been painted, new gaskets and etc., and then take the head off. Here we have the initial wash, basically just the initial clean up, nothing too dramatic, just to physically get the bulk of the rubbish off, remove the pickup, etc. Just sort of like get the rubbish off of the block before I give it a proper jet wash afterwards. Now the thing I'm going to do now is, before I do the jet wash, I'm going to remove the head. So the first thing in removing the head is remove these bolts here in order to remove this cover. Once the cover's removed, we'll then be able to see the cams. Bolts removed, and now lift the box off. Have a good look inside just in case there's anything nasty like bits of metal. Gently put that down, and there is the cams. If you look at the cams themselves, they look in quite good condition, which is good news, because you don't want to see damaged cams, because that could be all sorts of grief. Now the next thing we're going to do is get the engine timed up so that we can physically remove the cams. Turn the engine until those lines align on the cams. Take that bolt there out, and you can get a special bolt, I've got one somewhere, that goes in there and locates the crank at TDC. Once you've got that, the engine's timed, then we need to remove the cam chain tensioner, undo the bolts which hold the cam shafts into position, remove the chain carefully, and then you can take the entire camshaft assembly off the engine. Once the cams are removed, make sure that the chain is kept up by putting something through it. We now have to remove the head bolts. That one there, that one there, that one there, that one there. They're the main studs that hold the head, and then you've got these external bolts there, that one there, these ones on the outside of the head, and another one round there. Remove them, and then we should then be able to remove the head from the engine. Once the head's removed, what I'm personally going to do, I'm then going to put the engine outside and give it a thorough jet wash. Right, once all of those bolts are off, tap the head all the way round with a rubber mallet just to get rid of the stickiness of the head, and then physically pull the head up. Make sure when you pull the head up you put something in to stop the chain falling into oblivion. Here we are then, an update to the engine. And here it is, all nicely cleaned up, ready to accept a new head gasket. Going to reassemble using new gaskets and various bits and pieces that I've managed to get. The head has been nicely cleaned up, come up quite nice. As you can see, the gasket face is superb. Cleaned all the areas just to make sure it's perfect. Done the same here. Cleaned all the gasket face. Got a brand new gasket to install. Clean the piston up. Piston looks nice, doesn't it? And yeah, I'm going to install the head so that I can actually make sure that the cam chain is correctly positioned on the sprocket at this end, at the bottom end, and then we'll go from there. You have to remove that bolt there completely out, and then replace it with a bolt that looks like that. Put that in its place, wind it in. The piston's at TDC, and you just wind that in, that other bolt, until it actually contacts the crank. Then it prevents the crank from turning once you've got it in, and then it locks the engine at TDC. And once it's at TDC, engine's locked. So you can't turn the engine at all. Trying to turn the engine, it won't turn because that's locked. So now you know that's where the engine should be when the camshafts are aligned at the top. And here we have the head ready to have the gasket fitted. Make sure the little pips come through and all the holes line up exactly as they should, in order that you don't get any issues later on. Pass the chain through, making sure that should be supported, and then it's time to lower the head. Check that the head is in superb condition. Give it a last good cleaning before you actually physically put it in, to make sure there's nothing in the way. Feed the chain through nice and carefully. So that then you can head into position. Check all around to make sure there's nothing untoward. Make sure it's safely right the way down. When it's right the way down, then you can actually start adding the bolts. Now these are the bolts you need to install. Those four there. These two here, that one there, that one there at the back. You can just see that one there. And then you've got three socket heads along the front here. That now the thing is, the workshop manual gives you torque red settings for these four, and it's done it in 2 stages: 20 Newton meters, 50 Newton meters. But it doesn't give you torque red settings for the other ones. It's just telling you to nip them up in sequence, so that you go that one, 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 those 3 down the front. I think these 4 are the important ones, because they're the ones with torque figures, and they actually hold the head onto the barrel. So 50 Newton meters at finish is important. So what we'll do, we'll nip those up, and then the next thing is installing the cams. There you go, all torqued down. Refit the shims. This engine has been re-shimmed since before I took it apart, so hopefully it won't want re-shimming. Put the camshaft base section in, and then the next thing, we want to fit the camshafts in. Make sure this one has got the section on it which operates the exhaust valve when the engine's starting. Note, we need to get it so that that line is in the same position it was in when we stripped it, because the engine is now held at TDC. But when we mate the camshaft to the chain, we have to make sure that it's tight on this side, because if it's slack, then when you come to move it, the camshaft will move. So it's a little bit involved. You have to play around with it until you can get it into the right position. Now this, at the moment, is slightly out. So we just take. So here it is. Make sure those lines, those little lines, lined up. Make sure the camshafts are in the right position. Notice the inlet camshaft is pointing towards the back of the engine. The exhaust camshaft is pointing towards the front of the engine. It is possible to get them 180 degrees out, and then of course that will be a nightmare. Once you've aligned that, stick the cam chain tensioner in. Do up the bolts that hold the cam cover section on. Hold the cam in position on the head. Remember, you still have that bolt underneath the engine. You need to remove that bolt and then rotate the engine 4 or 5 times to check that everything still lines up in the right place. Because if it doesn't, then you need to sort out why. Unfortunately, the camera batteries died when I was doing it. Otherwise I would have been able to show you how I did it. It's a little bit involved. Really, it's difficult to do on your own, but it is possible. Okay, there it is. Now we're going to fit the alternator cover. Gone round, cleaned all the old gasket off, get rid of the gaskets to make sure it's nice and clean. Got a new gasket in stock, ready to be fitted. So we're going to fit that on in a minute. Then got to put the pickup back in. Got to wire the stator, or what, not wire it, but fit the stator back into the cover. The cover is all nicely cleaned up now, ready. Got some nice new bolts to hold it on with too. So new gasket, cover nicely bolted up with stainless bolts, and here we go. Pickup fitted, gasket fitted, a little tiny bit of grease on the face just to hold the gasket in position, so that when you actually offer the cover up, the bolt holes will be in position. Stator bolted into the cover, nice and clean, cover all cleaned up, ready, new bolts ready to be fitted, and now we offer the cover up to the engine, bolt it on with the new bolts so that it looks like that. Doesn't that look nice? Stainless bolts, nice paint on the actual cover, nice new gasket, everything been done. I still got to put the cover that goes over there, just 2 little bolts, and then that finishes that. But look at that, the head's on, this side's on. We've got to do the head cover, which is currently being cleaned up, ready for painting, and we've got to do the other side, which is not quite ready yet. And then the other side, fit the cover, new bolts, make sure the impeller's on, cover's nicely bolted up, couple of bolts not quite in place, they'll be replaced shortly, and then ready for the cover for the pump and the starter motor replacement. So beginning to look like an engine. After a morning of mucking about, refurbing the starter motor, refitting it with new bolts, fitting the water pump cover, fitting the hoses, the wiring, the inlet manifold, all those little bits and pieces, making the picture up until the engine is beginning to be ready to reinstall.